us an inside look at everything going on with the Bucs at training camp, Vita Vea, and of course Baker Mayfield. That here in the first hour. But let's dive into the 5 biggest stories of the day. Right off the top, we call it the high 5.
5.
Little pop to Debo, touchdown. That'll go down as a touchdown pass. Those are the kinds we like. And Debo took care of the rest.
Joe Buck and Troy Aikman on Monday Night Football on ESPN. Not in 2025, but that was back in 2024. A Week 17 San Francisco loss to the Detroit Lions. That was Debo Samuel's last touchdown catch as a San Francisco 49er, where he is now headed back because, well, someone has to play wide receiver in San Francisco. Oof. First, the coach gets hurt, and then injuries start to pile up, including Ricky Pearsall. And the Niners are in a rough spot here because this is not what we would call, I don't want to say it's not useful. Look, again, the Niners need somebody to catch footballs, and Mike Evans can't do it all. And Christian Kirk, he's dinged up. Ricky Pearsall, we mentioned. And that kind of leaves you with DeJon Stribling, a rookie second-round pick. So, yeah, sure, let's bring Debo back. Sure, why not? At least we know him, and he knows us. I'm sure this will go exceedingly well. Look, I am not anti-Debo Samuel. In fact, I've made suggestions towards a couple of teams that are thinner at wide receiver, taking a look at Debo as training camps approached. And now that they're open, I can't blame a team that's thin at wide receiver bringing Debo in to see what he's got left in the tank. If he can do more than catch little, jet motion pop passes like that one you just heard the highlight of. If he could actually do anything more than that, hey, Debo could be a useful piece. But Debo Samuel out there getting like 50% of the snaps or more at this point in his career is not a formula for success. We'll see where the Pearsall injury goes for the Niners. It doesn't sound good, according to early reports. We'll see whether Christian Kirk can play a full season or not. But if the Niners receiving core, and George Kittle's not healthy either, by the way. Is George Kittle ever healthy? I don't mean that as a knock against Kittle because he'll play when he's not healthy. I really like George Kittle, warrior mentality and all. But if if the Niners receiving core is Mike Evans and Debo Samuel, they're in trouble. But hey, at least we know the guy, right? Next.
4.
The Big Ten is the best league in football, and a lot of really good football teams. It's hard to win on the road. Very physical football teams, very well coached. It definitely prepares you for the playoffs. There's no doubt about it. The numbers speak for themselves. I mean, we don't run a hype machine up here in the Midwest. We believe everything's earned, not given. And when we fall short, we say we fell short. We don't cry a river, whine, and complain. All right? And that's why we're the best.
Google me. Kurt Signetti at Big Ten Media Days yesterday. I love this man. Because he has no problem just pulling out the big brass ones and throwing them on the podium right there in Chicago yesterday. He knows he's not winning another national title this year. At least I would think he knows that. Look, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we're all wrong, and Indiana is right back deep in a playoff run this year. More than likely not. That's not the point. The point is, Kurt Signetti just had... If there were... You know how Santa Claus every year slides down the chimney and he's got a big old red sack filled with toys and he leaves them under the tree for you? If Kurt Signetti had a big old bag of Fs, they're all gone. They're totally... He's thrown them all out. He has no Fs left to give. Sorry, kids, no Fs under your tree this year on Christmas Day because Coach Sig has none. He'll tell you exactly what he thinks. And here's the thing about this. He's not wrong. Oh, my God. Everyone in the SEC just lost their mind.
Well, look at our schedule.
Yeah, I know. Your schedule's tough. I know. It just means more down there. I don't say this as some sort of Big Ten fanboy because I've grown up in Big Ten country. I'm an alum of a Big Ten school. I don't. I say this because over the last 3 to 4, maybe 5 years, we've actually seen a giant shift in the balance of power to where the Big Ten and SEC are at the very least on equal footing. And when the Big Ten is racking up national championships and the SEC is complaining about NIL and the rules and, well, our schedule, it's just, come on. If you're the SEC and you're the big boys, this is where the big boys play, huh? Then you don't complain about the schedule. You don't complain about the rules. You don't tell everyone that you're going to take your ball and go home. You just get better, like the Big Ten has done over the last half decade or so, like Indiana did over the last half decade or so. Actually, 3 years. Like Curt Cignetti did. I love it. I love SEC and Big Ten media days, especially when you get coaches taking shots at the other power conferences. Thank you, Curt Cignetti. Next.
3.
Shuck looking end zone. Touchdown! Olave! That's a red zone touchdown for the Saints. And what an opening drive for New Orleans to start the second half.
Andrew Catalan on CBS, Week 17 last year. Saints went on to beat the Titans in that one in Nashville, 34-26, to cap a 4-game winning streak. Don't forget they won 5 of their last 8 after starting the year 1-8, after ending the whole Spencer Rattler charade and going with Tyler Shuck. I've never been a huge Tyler Shuck believer, but you go back and look at what the Saints did late last year, and you kind of just, you do the Alonzo Mourning meme, right? Shake your head looking at the overall schedule and some of the numbers, and then you slowly start to nod your head as a Saints fan, like, maybe we got something here. Maybe this isn't so bad. And that certainly includes Chris Olave, who got a big extension from the Saints yesterday. And now, all of a sudden, I know the offensive line needs work. And it will be a work in progress. But all of a sudden, you look at the Saints offense, and I guess we could talk about do we have to talk about the defense? No, let's not talk about the defense. But you look at the offense, and Achane, however you want to say it, Travis, with Alvin Kamara as a complement in the backfield. Shuck maybe taking a step forward in his first full year as a starting quarterback. Olave, Tyson. You've got weapons at tight end. Juwan Johnson is always reliable. Noah Fant could be a decent compliment. And then you look at the rest of the division. Carolina is like a MASH unit right now. The Tampa Bay Bucks, we'll get to the Bucks in just a second. That division is there for the taking. We all agree on that, right? So, why not the Saints? At the very least, you have to like the fact that they've identified a quarterback. Shuck had some promising moments late last year once he got the job, and now he's got the weapons to work with. And they're starting to build it out. We'll talk about teams we want to buy stock in and teams we want to sell stock in. And the Saints may or may not be a part of that conversation when we get into it about an hour and 10 minutes from now here on Westwood One Sports. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos today here on You Better You Bet, counting down the 5 biggest stories of the day right off the top. We call it the high 5. Number 2.
2.
The 0-2 from Strong. Clemens in the air to right center field and deep. Back it goes. Deep it goes. And Cody Clemens wins it. And the Twins walk off the Royals once again at Target Field. Can you believe it? 4-3 the final. Down to their final strike. Twins win. Twins win. The Twins win it!
Corey Provis on Twins TV yesterday. I think the Twins won. Cody Clemens with a walk-off grand slam down to their final strike in that game. And all of a sudden, the Twins, they've re-entered the chat. Everybody's in the chat. It's one of those group text threads that you put on mute because you know people are going to send stupid stuff all day. And maybe you'll just catch up with it later at night because there's too many people in it, right? That's what the playoff chase is in Major League Baseball right now. Half of Major League Baseball, 15 of the 30 teams are within 3 games of the wild card cut line in each league. Half. Now, look, there are half a dozen teams that have at least 60 wins and definitely should be buyers. There are 9 teams far enough back in the chase that we know they're out and they're most likely selling. But that leaves half of Major League Baseball in that mushy middle, trying to decide, are we buyers? If we are, how much are we willing to spend? Is Dad going to give us the credit card if we go out to the mall tonight and go shopping? We've got 72 hours until the Major League Baseball trade deadline. And the mushy middle could decide how active this thing really is, aside from, well, you know, Tarek Skubal, who'd really like to go to the Dodgers, but that's not all said and done yet. And if it ends up being said and done, that Skubal's able to push his way to LA because he wants to sign there in the offseason anyway, then perhaps all of those owners who want to enforce a hard cap and floor system in Major League Baseball starting this offseason will have yet another argument against why the Dodgers, or for why the Dodgers are ruining baseball. But keep an eye. There are other teams in the Skubal sweepstakes. I heard Steve Phillips mention something yesterday right here on this very show in relation to Skubal. We'll let you hear that at the top of the hour at 10 o'clock. Talk about Skubal, the mushy middle, and I will power rank the 5 teams in that mushy middle out of the 15 within 3 games of the wild card cut line who I think should be buyers, depending on how much they're willing to spend. I guess that's a different factor. But we'll power rank them at the top of the hour at 10 Eastern, 7 Pacific here on Westwood One Sports. Finally, number 1.
1.
I really know what I've brought to this franchise, leadership-wise, and even play-wise. It's been some of the best years of my career, and I think it's only going to trend upwards, just being comfortable and feeling that. So disappointing in that regard to not have, to feel disrespected a little bit. And that's really the disappointing part, to feel undervalued after, thinking you've earned it.
Baker Mayfield yesterday, you may have heard some of that right here on Westwood One Sports because Baker's comments broke during the final hour on You Better You Bet. And I heard Nick talk about them a good bit yesterday. I heard Bleck and Abdallah talk about it right off the top of their show yesterday here on Westwood One Sports. And with it being less than 24 hours ago, it is at the top of the NFL news cycle. The Bucs are trying to toy with Baker Mayfield. They don't want to give Baker Mayfield $50 million a year. They don't want to give him any more than 2 years on the deal. And to that, I would ask the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, why not? What do you have waiting in the wings for when Baker Mayfield is no longer your quarterback? And look, I understand that Baker has said that he'll play on the franchise tag if it comes to that next year. So maybe you look at it as, hey, we've got 2 more years of Baker. Let's see what we can get out of him before we let the old boy walk away. But this is the guy who's given the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, as good as their defense has been at times, this is the guy who's given the Bucs some sort of identity in the post-Brady era. And this is a guy who will literally try to play through anything. Now, does that hurt him sometimes? Absolutely. Can he make some stupid decisions at times and try to cash some checks or write some checks with his arm that the rest of them can't cash. I screwed that analogy up. The point is, the Bucs need Baker Mayfield. And the fact that they're toying with him right now, while Vita Vea, the best player on the other side of the ball, also asks for a trade, shows you that they just really don't get it. They've got a lame duck head coach. And in a division, as I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, that is wide open. In a division that can easily be won, as we saw last year. In a division that should be theirs, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers organization has said, you know what? We'll figure it out tomorrow or next week or next month or next year. The entire thing has become lame duck in Tampa because they don't want to commit to anything. A commitment to Baker Mayfield. And look, you don't have to guarantee him so much money that beyond 2 years, you're not able to get out of the deal. It's the NFL. These contracts are as flimsy as they come. You can restructure, you can rework, you can get out of it after 2 years if you want to. Give the man 4 or 5 years. Pay that man his money. It's a terrible John Malkovich, I'm sorry. Pay that man his money. Secure your quarterback for the next 2 years, as you've already apparently decided you're willing to do by letting this thing play out and maybe go to the tag next year, and have some sort of direction at the very least. They have none. And when we look up at the end of the year and maybe the Panthers are the team from the NFC South, I don't know, maybe it's the Saints who we talked about earlier. But when we look up at the end of the year and we're all wondering why the Bucs are 7-10 or 8-9 again and haven't gone back to the playoffs and they're looking for a new head coach, it'll be because this team just refused to pick a direction and go in it. And that is no more exemplified than in the way they've handled the Baker Mayfield contract negotiation this offseason. We'll talk to Aaron Jacobson of 95.7 WDAE down in Tampa in about 15 minutes about how everyone in Tampa is reacting to this. Do they feel the same way I do? Like the Buccaneers are completely screwing this up? Do they feel it makes sense, both in relation to Mayfield and Vea? That on the way. Top of the hour, I will power rank the teams in that mushy middle in Major League Baseball. Not the known contenders, but the teams battling for wild card positioning. Which of them need to buy? A little bit later, West Virginia head coach Rich Rodriguez, Odyssey NBA insider Nick Friedel. But coming up next here on Westwood One Sports, somebody threw their big brass ones up on the podium at Big Ten Media Days in Chicago, and we'll let you hear exactly what was said next here on Westwood One Sports.
Welcome back to You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
Coming up, somebody threw the big brass ones up on the podium in Chicago yesterday. Let you hear what he said. And somebody else wants to play nice. And his fans aren't exactly excited about that. I love college football media days. Just so much nonsense comes out of them, and the Big Ten is in the thick of that right now in Chicago. Coming up in 10 minutes, Aaron Jacobson from 95.7 WDAE in Tampa to talk about Baker Mayfield, Vita Vea, and, well, just the mess that is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as training camp is up and running. Top of the hour, I'll power rank for you the teams in that mushy middle, the 15 teams that are within 3 games of the wild card cut line in the AL and NL. I'll power rank the top 5 that need to buy before Monday afternoon's trade deadline in Major League Baseball. Before we get to all of that, this is just a quick note I wanted to throw out there because, as much as we've talked about, is the SEC going to break away and do their own thing? What would that mean for college football? You're seeing it play out somewhat similarly. It's not totally apples to apples, but somewhat similarly in another sport right now. A sport that we all spent more time paying attention to over the last month and a half than we will at all for the next, 3.5 years. Soccer, international soccer. UEFA, that's the European Football Federation, has agreed to boycott all FIFA competitions, including the World Cup. And since that was announced yesterday afternoon, you've also seen CONCACAF, North America's governing soccer body, and the Asian Football Confederation jump in to join Europe as well, which effectively neuters FIFA and makes the World Cup the next time it comes around. And I know you don't care about it, average American sports fan, until it comes around again in another 4 years, but effectively makes it worthless if all of these countries are saying, no, FIFA, we think you're dirty and corrupt. We're not going to be a part of this. And it is the equivalent to if the SEC and probably the Big Ten as well looked at college football and said, no, we're going to go do our own thing over here because we don't like the way things are going right now. So, again, I know as soon as the U.S. was eliminated, or maybe you stuck around through the end of the World Cup, you stopped paying attention to international soccer, but it was a massive story for international soccer that came out yesterday afternoon, and it sounds like FIFA's in a weird and very bad spot that I wanted to mention because it is very analogous for me to what we've talked about in college football, where the SEC and the Big Ten are always going back and forth about what the structure is going to look like of not just the game in its totality, but the playoff as well. And that always lends itself to a nice little back and forth between the Power Two, the SEC and the Big Ten. And that continued. Last week we had SEC Media Days. That continued today, or will continue today, as Big Ten Media Days are underway. Yesterday, we got this wonderful little nugget from Curt Cignetti.
The Big Ten is the best league in football, and a lot of really good football teams. It's hard to win on the road. Very physical football teams, very well coached. It definitely prepares you for the playoffs. There's no doubt about it. The numbers speak for themselves. I mean, we don't run a hype machine up here in the Midwest. We believe everything's earned, not given. And when we fall short, we say we fell short. We don't cry a river, whine, and complain. All right? And that's why we're the best.
Curt Cignetti, Indiana head coach, yesterday at Big Ten Media Days. Just incredible. Because when he throws the big brass ones up on the podium in front of everyone there in Chicago, you know that he means it. Like, there are a lot of coaches that little soliloquy could have come from, and you go, oh, just stop it. I can't stand it with you. With Curt Cignetti, you go, my man, I love it. Keep it coming. Because typically this has been a man who backs up everything he says. and you have somebody calling out the SEC machine and, as he put it, all the whining that they do. Now, he didn't name the SEC specifically, but you know that's who he's talking about. And you've got surrogates for the SEC and the media talking about, oh, the schedule's so hard. We got to play good teams. Well, I get it. Maybe the SEC is deeper than the Big Ten. I don't think I could argue that. But when we talk about teams at the very tippy-tip top of the game, who's winning national championships? It's the Big Ten. And so the SEC, and especially the big boys of the SEC, need to take a good, long, hard look in the mirror and ask themselves, okay, are we willing to do what it takes to get better? So that we can finally wrest back control from the Big Ten in this little tug of war between the Power Two. The other interesting thing that came out of Big Ten Media Days yesterday, and the audio on this one isn't quite as good. We got it from Matt Fortuna, who covers college football. It's from his Twitter account. And it's not directly from the mic at the podium, but I still wanted to play it for you because the reaction to it from fans has been, in my opinion, hilarious. Kyle Whittingham, new coach at Michigan, was asked whether he hates Ohio State and Ryan Day.
I just think that a rivalry can be intense and emotional without the hatred factor. I don't think there's any place for that personally. I think Ryan Day's a good person, and to sit here and say I hate Ryan Day, I'd be making crap up. That's not true.
He doesn't hate Ryan Day. He doesn't hate Ohio State. And Michigan fans have been fairly apoplectic about this online since it came out yesterday. I've even seen some Ohio State fans who are like, what? You don't hate us? What's wrong with you? Just a thought, okay? Just bear with me here. But maybe, just maybe, after the whole Sharon Moore debacle, Michigan needs a somewhat emotionally stable head coach at the helm. Maybe. You think that might be, you think that might be good for the program to sort of find some stability after years of controversy and scandal? I get it. You hate Ohio State. I totally get it. Look, I hate Ohio State too. But that's only because every year they remind my team that they're not as good as I think they are. You hate Ohio State for similar reasons, but because it's just in your DNA, right? It's not in Kyle Whittingham's DNA to hate Ohio State. And that's okay. You don't always need a Michigan man to lead the way. In fact, you probably don't need a Michigan man. You need a Kyle Whittingham. You do. You need to find some sort of level-headedness. And trust me, by the time the game comes around, there will be more than enough vitriol and hate to go back and forth between Columbus and Ann Arbor. Your guys will get up for the game. Their guys will get up for the game. But maybe, just maybe, after the way things have gone for the last several years, the Wolverines could use somebody to walk in and say, hey guys, here's an idea. Let's be good at football and let all the other stuff just fade into the background. We'll hate those guys maybe the week of the game. How's that sound? Until then, let's just get this program back on some stable footing. Coming up top of the hour, I want to power rank the teams in baseball's mushy middle, as I call it. 15 teams within 3 games of the wild card cut line in the AL and NL. I want to power rank the top 5 that I think need to be buyers before Monday afternoon's trade deadline. But coming up, been a rocky start to training camp in Tampa. Vita Vea requesting a trade. Baker Mayfield detailing how he's been disrespected by the organization. We'll ask Aaron Jacobson of 95.7 WDAE in Tampa what the fallout will be for the Bucs next here on Westwood One Sports.
Welcome back to You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
And this segment sponsored by Progressive Commercial Insurance, protecting your business vehicles 24/7. See if you can save at progressivecommercial.com. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos today here on Westwood One Sports. Top of the hour. Is it anywhere but LA for Tarek Skubal? Something interesting was said on yesterday's show that I want to revisit. Plus, I'll power rank the teams that need to buy before Monday afternoon's deadline. Coming up in about 35 minutes, we will buy and sell stock in NFL teams very early in training camp. And in the final hour of the show today, Nick Friedel, our Odyssey NBA insider, and West Virginia head coach Rich Rodriguez, all here on You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM. Again, Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos today, and the big news of the last 24 hours, Baker Mayfield sitting down with the media in Tampa yesterday at Bucs camp to talk about how he's felt disrespected by contract negotiations over a possible contract extension with the Bucs this offseason. You've also got Vita Vea asking for a trade. You've got presumably a lame duck head coach in Todd Bowles. There's a lot going on in Tampa with a team that probably should have a path to win a division. We got done talking about the Saints earlier, how maybe they improve. Yeah, there's the Panthers. They went to the playoffs last year, but everybody's hurt. This should be Tampa's division for the taking. So what is the fallout of everything going on with Baker Mayfield, Vita Vea, and everything else in Bucs camp? Let's talk to somebody who knows. Aaron Jacobson, co-host of Pat and Aaron, mornings on 95.7 WDAE in Tampa, joins us now on Westwood One Sports. Morning, Aaron. How are you?
I'm doing great. The division should have been for the taking last year. The Bucs had it. They blew it. Bucs fans were upset. Mike Evans takes his bags, picks up, and leaves town to go to San Francisco, and nothing has gone right since then.
So let me ask you, does the collapse last year, because Baker was dinged up and was not 100% down the stretch. He had a great first half of the season. We were talking about him in MVP conversations, and then everything fell apart in the second half. Is that sort of being laid at Baker's feet now, and the reason the team looks at him as no more than, hey, play out the contract and then move on?
I think there's some truth to it, right? You can look at Baker Mayfield, you can look at the performance at the end of the year, and you can put some of that on Baker. You can also put it on the fact that the offensive line was never healthy for the Buccaneers, and we all know it starts up front. And then you can look at Baker and say, well, the way you play football, your brand of football, puts your body at risk every single season. That's just how he plays football. You don't want to take the Baker out of Baker Mayfield, but Bucs fans and people here in Tampa, they can understand the hesitation from Bucs GM Jason Light and this front office to really give him a long-term deal, knowing that this is just the way he plays, and will his body hold up?
Is there also a sect of the fan base, though, and the media down there, Aaron, that look at the way Baker plays, as you just outlined, and it's true, that look at the way Baker plays and say, well, hey, at the very least, we know this guy is going to go balls to the wall. He's going to do everything he can every single week to not just be out there, but to try and will this team to a victory. That leadership quotient, and Baker brought it up yesterday, the job he's done as a leader, is that looked at, especially in a year with a lame duck head coach, as being valuable to what they want to accomplish there?
Absolutely. Bucs fans, they remember, even though now it's starting to seem like they're forgetting, when Tom Brady decided to retire, it was sky is falling. This team's going to take a step backwards. We thought Kyle Trask was going to be the quarterback of this team. And here comes Baker Mayfield on an extremely team-friendly deal. And he delivered. And as a leader, he delivered. He has become the leader of this locker room. Here in Tampa, he's everywhere. He's in the public. He's a leader in the community. So people love Baker Mayfield. I think a lot of fans were surprised by how honest and open he was publicly yesterday about feeling disrespected.
So where does it go from here? Because that's the question I like. When I see a team and look, like it or not, Baker Mayfield has played his way into franchise quarterback conversation. And so when I see a team look at their franchise quarterback and say, yeah, you know what, we'll probably let this thing run its course, it's usually because they've got somebody or something waiting in the wings. There is nothing waiting in the wings in that quarterback room. It's Jake Browning. And so do the Bucs have because I have to think, again, in this division, you consider yourself able to win the division, especially if Mayfield plays inspired football. And so you're not going to be in position next year to draft one of the top quarterbacks. And even if you do draft a top quarterback, it still means a reset of the roster and the organization when you take a first-round quarterback. So have they made any plans for the future beyond Baker Mayfield after seemingly driving this giant wedge between themselves and their franchise quarterback?
Absolutely no plans. And I think that's kind of part of this equation. They do believe in Baker Mayfield, but the way things stand right now, he's already under contract for this season. And then they look at it as, okay, let's say he has a good season. We can franchise tag him next year, so you get the control from Baker Mayfield for next season. When it comes to a disgruntled Baker Mayfield, Jason Light is a good people person. He knows his guys. I think he understands Baker's not that type of player or person that's going to become a malcontent. He's going to play his hardest. He's going to deliver when he's on the football field, no matter what he's thinking away from the football field. So I don't think that's a concern. I don't think they're looking and saying, well, we got a quarterback. This guy's waiting in the wings. We feel good about it. What I do think could be happening here, which is a bigger problem as well, is I don't think this front office knows if Todd Bowles is the answer as a coach for the future. And if that's the case, they may be looking ahead and saying, well, let's say this year goes off the rails and we get rid of Todd Bowles. The coach we might bring in may not want Baker Mayfield to be the quarterback of this team when he starts fresh. So that's a bigger problem within itself, that if you're looking to the unknowns of if you fired Todd Bowles, I look at that as if you're thinking that, then Todd Bowles, he ain't the guy.
Yeah, Aaron Jacobson of 95.7 WDAE in Tampa with us talking Baker Mayfield and the Bucs. And that's the next biggest question here. If you've got a lame duck head coach, as Todd Bowles feels like right now, then again, you reference Baker's leadership, not just in the room and on the field, but in the community. What is the direction beyond quarterback, just the direction of this franchise in general beyond 2026?
We don't know. It's unknown. It kind of depends on what they do, like I said, with Todd Bowles. And, Todd Bowles has not shown himself to be a head coach that can deliver that next level, get you to the playoffs. He's done it in a weak division, but anybody, like you said, the South is there for the taking. And they just haven't been able to dominate, and they start off seasons really hot. So for Todd Bowles, the problem is everybody loves Todd Bowles here. In the front office, as a human being, Todd Bowles is great. As a defensive-minded coach, Todd Bowles is great. As a head coach, he has not proven himself to be great. We don't understand, and Bucs fans don't understand what that hold is he has over the Buccaneers, where they still believe in him as a head coach.
Aaron, what is the resolution, if there is one, to the Vita Vea situation?
There's not really one. A'Shawn Robinson, who they brought in, could be slotted in at nose tackle. You just put him in there, but you can't really replace a Vita Vea. He's that dominant. The only problem is, I don't know if you're going to get a lot in return if you trade him. Vita's requested the trade from what we hear. I think they're going to work that thing out. Vita has a good relationship with Todd Bowles. He has been on this team for a while now, and he's had a lot of success here. So I think they eventually will work that thing out. They're saying he's injured right now. I think we all know that's a bunch of baloney. It's all about the money, why he's not practicing right now. But eventually I do think that gets worked out. But he's somebody you cannot replace.
Before I let you run, Aaron, I got to ask. I know you don't own one. Maybe you do. But I think I know you pretty well. You don't own a crystal ball. But if you had one and you were asked to look into it and tell me who the head coach and the quarterback are of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers a year from now, what does your crystal ball say?
It says Todd Bowles and Baker Mayfield. I don't think they changed course. They've been riding this course out for a while, and unless something comes and pops up, I don't think they change course. Of course, a bunch of people in Tampa Bay, they'll take it. They want John Gruden as the head coach. There's a bunch of suggestions being thrown out from fans, but I think the way things have proven themselves to go, I think it's just going to keep going in the same direction.
Keep an eye on my guy Mike T. He might not like TV as much as we think he's going to like TV. Aaron, thank you so much for the time. I appreciate it this morning, and continue to do a great job. We'll keep listening, and appreciate your insights.
Thanks so much. Have a great weekend.
You too. Aaron Jacobson from Pat and Aaron, mornings on 95.7 WDAE in Tampa. I don't think, I know what Aaron's saying, that Tampa is just sort of plodded along year by year now through the Mayfield and Bowles era. I think a year from now, I don't think it's either one of those guys. I think Baker walks off into the sunset after whatever happens this year and finds a gig somewhere else. And I'm only half joking when I mention Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin is going to do TV this year, okay? And we'll see how that goes. Like, I'd be the first to tell you, I'm sure he's going to have a fun little saying or Tomlinism cooked up for every Sunday night on NBC. And we're all going to go, oh, yeah, that was good. I like that. If you got red paint, paint the barn red. You know, ridiculous Tomlinisms like that. But I just don't think the man is going to be able to fill up his cup by doing TV. He is a ball coach. And Mike Tomlin is going to want to be back in football. And wouldn't it be ironic if a year from now, Mike Tomlin were the head coach in Tampa and Baker Mayfield went off and became the quarterback in Pittsburgh? It's not crazy. Aaron Rodgers is guaranteed that this is his last year. What if Will Howard and Drew Aller don't really show any signs of development while sitting on the sidelines behind Rodgers this year? I know I'm taking a lot of twos, adding them together and getting a lot of fives. But I'm just saying, I don't think Mayfield and Bowles are back next year in Tampa. The franchise tag, I think, is going to be way too unwieldy. Maybe Tampa does that to themselves and their cap, but I think they're going to let Baker play out the contract this year and then, like I said, let him walk off into the sunset. Plenty of baseball to talk about with the trade deadline now just 72 hours away. If your home run bet comes up short inside your BetMGM app, no sweat. Thanks to today's MLB No Sweat Home Run Token, you don't have to worry if your bet doesn't clear the fences. Activate your token when you bet on any player to hit a home run, and if that player fails to go yard, you'll get your stake back in bonus bets, all inside the BetMGM app today. Download it, and please gamble responsibly. Which teams have to buy in the next 72 hours before the MLB trade deadline? I'll power rank them for you next, right here on Westwood One Sports.
laugh, to win, and to live the thrill of the action.
Hey, baby, let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs. What the hell's going on out here? No idea what's going on, but I am excited.
Every pick, every play, every game-changing moment.
Unbelievable!
This is You Better You Bet, brought to you by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
72 hours until the Major League Baseball trade deadline. Okay, maybe technically 77 right now as we sit here speaking to you on Westwood One Sports, but it's right around the corner. We know a handful of teams that are definitely going to be buyers. We know more than a handful are going to be sellers. And then there's a giant swath of teams in the middle, the big mushy middle in Major League Baseball that will decide whether this trade deadline is a snoozer, aside from Tarek Skubal, or gets truly wild as teams try to position themselves for, well, in many cases, wild card spots. I will power rank the teams in that big mushy middle that need to buy in the next 72 hours. Coming up in just a moment here on Westwood One Sports. I'm Chris Mack, in for Nick Kostos today here on You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM. Live across the country on all of our Westwood One Sports affiliates. Thank you for tuning us in today. Also across North America on SiriusXM Channel 375 and always live inside the Westwood One Sports app and your free Odyssey app, AUDACY. You're always welcome to jump on the phones. What is your concern about your favorite team as they're opening up training camp this week in the NFL? Everybody finally hitting the practice field over the last few days. We've seen injuries in some spots. We've seen contract extensions. We've seen arguments about contract extensions. We've seen young quarterbacks. We've seen, well, old quarterbacks. My God, if you get a chance to see the Kirk Cousins doing wind sprints, would we call those sprints during warm-ups? That video that's made the rounds on social media over the last 24 hours. It's depressing because it reminds me of how old I am, because I look at it and laugh at first because Kirk Cousins is last in all of the sprints. And then I go, oh, but I'd probably look even worse. Everything is a story in training camp. And we will look at some of those stories in 20 minutes here on Westwood One Sports. And we'll buy some stock in teams and we'll sell some stock in teams. And maybe even go back and forth between Liam Cohen and Ben Johnson as well. We thought veiled shade was only being thrown around between college coaches over the last couple of weeks. No, NFL coaches have entered the chat in that regard as well. But, like I said, 15 teams. 15. Half of Major League Baseball is within 3 games in either direction of the cut line for the wild card, the final wild card spot in both the AL and NL. There are 6 teams that are quite clearly, with 60 wins or more already, going to be buyers. Tampa, the Yankees, in the NL, the Dodgers, the Brewers, the Braves, the Cubs, and then you have the dregs, right? The Angels, the A's, the Royals, the Blue Jays, the Tigers, the Rockies, the Mets, the Giants, the Reds. And everyone else is somewhere in the middle, within 3 games on either side of the cut line for the wild card in the AL and NL. And those are the 15 teams I want to focus on, because those are the 15 teams that are going to decide whether this trade deadline is a wildly interesting one or is a snoozer, aside from the one deal that we do know is going to happen. And I'll get to the power rankings in a second. But Steve Phillips was on the show yesterday. Of course, SiriusXM MLB Network Radio. And he was talking to Nick Kostos about Tarek Skubal. And it becomes increasingly clear, according to all the reports, that Tarek Skubal wants to go to LA. He wants to be a Dodger. He'd much rather have it happen in the next 72 hours and then maybe negotiate a contract extension from there, or maybe get an extension worked out as part of the deal here at the deadline. But at the very least, he wants to be a Dodger at latest this offseason. That's what it sounds like, according to all the reporting. Skubal wants to be in LA. Well, they have a lot of resources to get that deal done. But do they have more than anybody else? Because there is one other team that has a stacked farm system who could end up being the team that lands Skubal. Steve Phillips yesterday, right here on You Better You Bet, talking about the Brewers.
Yeah, I think it's going to be the Milwaukee Brewers. I think the Dodgers are going to be
Not
in, by
the
the way.
Dodgers.
I think no, I think the Dodgers will be in, but I don't think that they're going to go too far down the road to be able to get them. But I think they're going to be in on it.
Steve Phillips yesterday, right here on Westwood One Sports, saying it's the Brewers. And the Brewers have a stacked system. As stacked, if not even more so, I think. And look, Steve knows better than me. He's a former GM. Maybe even more stacked than the Dodgers system. So the Brewers have the resources to get it done. The question is, how much of a fight is Skubal going to put up in wanting to go to LA instead? He only has so much pull in this push and pull between the Tigers and whoever they decide to deal with. He's going to be in LA eventually. It's just a question of whether it happens before Monday afternoon or sometime in the offseason. And there's also the interesting ripple effect, which we won't dig into too deeply here because I want to get to the power rankings. But there is also that ripple effect of what Skubal to the Dodgers, if it happens at the deadline, does to just the complexion of these labor negotiations. Because it's going to be the Dodgers stacking up another ace in that rotation, right? With Snell and Glass now presumably back by the time the playoffs roll around. And the Dodgers just putting together a super team, right? And that's what every other owner around Major League Baseball, outside of maybe LA and New York, is going to point to and say, well, look, how are we supposed to compete with this? And the Dodgers, for their part, are going to say, well, you can't compete with us because we're better than you. We stack our farm system and we use all those resources to trade for superstars that want to play in LA. And then the rest of the league is going to push back and say, well, it helps when you've got $1 billion in TV revenue that you don't share with anybody. Skubal goes to Milwaukee, as Steve Phillips just said there. If Skubal goes to Milwaukee and maybe wins with the Brewers, maybe the Brewers, as I've said for the last month or so, if the Brewers land Skubal, I think they get past the Dodgers in October. I think that's the piece. Look, losing Brandon Woodruff, him being hurt, obviously hamstrings those chances. But Jacob Mizorowski and Tarek Skubal, I think that's enough to get you past the Dodgers. And if that happens, if the Brewers show up in the World Series, maybe even win it because they went out and got Skubal to add to that rotation, well, then that pushes back on all the narratives that the small market teams can't compete. Because everyone's going to say, but the Brewers. And they'll have a point to an extent. I still believe that the massive gap in wealth disparity and spending ability between the Dodgers, the Phils, the Mets, the Yankees, and pretty much everyone else needs to be fixed with a cap and a floor. Make those teams that don't like to spend money. But that's a discussion for this winter. We'll see where Skubal ends up in the next 72 hours. It's going to be with one of those teams, though, whether it's the Brewers, the Dodgers, the Rays, maybe. One of those teams that's already sitting near the top of the standings, most likely. What about those teams that aren't sitting near the top of the standings? Let's power rank the teams in the mushy middle that need to buy. And I'm going to start, we'll count it down from number 5 to number 1. I'm going to start at number 5 with the Cleveland Guardians. Because every year the Guardians are in the conversation. Another team that big market owners could push back with against that narrative of, well, small markets can't compete. What are you talking about? And you could push back on that and say, well, no, the Guardians manage to compete every year. But to really make a push in an American League that feels like it belongs to the Rays and the Yankees, even though the Yankees are just sitting, waiting, looking at the medical room, waiting for Aaron Judge to get cleared. Their offense needs more power in the middle of the order. All the great starting pitching is not going to get you very far in October if you don't have some run support. And so the Guardians have to add at the deadline. They're number 5 on my power rankings of teams in that mushy middle that need to buy in the next 72 hours. Number 4, the Pittsburgh Pirates. They have now given up 6 walk-off losses after last night's loss to the Reds in the bottom of the 9th in Cincinnati. If you've paid any attention to baseball at all this year, you know that the Pirates have one of the best offenses in baseball. They've got one of the best young rotations in baseball, even with Paul Skeens being somewhat inconsistent by his incredibly high standards. Braxton Ashcraft, an all-star this year. Mitch Keller has also been a strong anchor to the rotation. Jared Jones, when healthy. I mean, they have a rotation that can win a playoff series when you balance it with the offense. But their bullpen is atrocious. It's basically Carmen Majinski, Mason Montgomery, and a prayer. And even those guys aren't getting it done all the time. And that's only 2 guys, and they won't let Montgomery throw more than an inning at a time. They have to consider how much they're willing to spend in the next 72 hours, because this is a team that's not just built to be a wild card this year, but to contend into the future as long as Paul Skeens is on their roster. But the Pirates have to go out and add some bullpen help before Monday afternoon at 3 o'clock. They're number 4 on my list of teams that need to buy before Monday afternoon's Major League Baseball trade deadline. Number 3, baseball's biggest disappointment this year, the Seattle Mariners. Once again, they don't have the bats. And the rotation's been, even when they're going with this 6-man rotation, been a little more inconsistent at times than I think they would like. But they've got to add another bat to the middle of the order. Otherwise, they're completely wasting their pitching staff yet again. And they'll just go down as another massive disappointment after a little blip on the radar, a little glimpse of hope last year. So the Mariners are number 3 on my power rankings of teams that need to buy before Monday afternoon. Number 2, I wouldn't have said this a week and a half ago, but the San Diego Padres. Look, you spend money the way the Padres do, you need to get into the playoffs, or else why aren't you selling off some of those high-priced pieces? I know AJ Preller doesn't like the idea of selling. So hell, go for it, big dog. Take a swing. Find some back end of the rotation depth. Find some more offense, obviously. Don't deal Mason Miller. And make a run at doing some kind of damage in the wild card round. Because San Diego feels like a market where you can't get away with missing the playoffs. You're not going to win the division, but you can't get away with missing the playoffs. And number 1 in my power rankings of teams in that mushy middle, somewhere within 3 games in either direction of the wild card cut line, the Philadelphia Phillies. Since the All-Star break, they haven't looked like themselves. The bats have vanished. But they've got all the pieces in place. They've got to add some offense in the outfield. They need a right-handed bat added to the outfield mix. They do that, get an impact bat from the right side of the plate that could play every day in the outfield. And I don't know if they're pushing the Braves for the NL East lead again by the end of the year, but at the very least, they'll find themselves in solid wild card position and with a chance to upend the Braves or maybe even the Brewers or the Dodgers in the LDS. And let's be honest, when you have a roster built the way the Phillies roster is, another team that simply cannot miss out on October. And so you do whatever you have to do to fortify yourself, even if it means you're just landing a wild card spot. So there are my power rankings of the 5 teams somewhere around the wild card cut line that need to add. Guardians 5, Pirates 4, Mariners 3, Padres 2, Phillies 1. Again, this isn't including the Dodgers, Brewers, Braves, Cubs, Rays, or Yankees, all of whom I just presume will make adds at the deadline and who are going to make the playoffs. I didn't include the White Sox. You're comfortably ahead of schedule. Arriving in the playoffs this year is the reward for being comfortably ahead of schedule. You don't need to sell off future pieces just to top out in the LDS. Maybe make a run at an ALCS. I would say the same thing about the Rangers. And then when you get down the list in the AL, you look at the Twins, the Astros, maybe even the Orioles. And I say, stand pat. What is your reward for getting into the wild card round this year for some of these teams? On the National League side, I'd include the Marlins and the Nationals, maybe even the Cardinals. A lot of these teams in that mushy middle, just slightly ahead of schedule. So enjoy being slightly ahead of schedule. And if you show up in the wild card round, it's great experience for a young ball club. And then you bolster the roster in the offseason. Because some of these teams, in particular the Guardians, the Pirates, I'd probably even include the Mariners in this list, have to consider, even if they're going to buy, how much they're willing to spend. Because especially in the case of a team like the Pirates, as I said, they're built for the future as much as for now. So you can't just give away the entire stockpile of future talent. You got to have something that you can add from the system going ahead into 2027. But those are the teams right there, those 5 that I think have to buy something. Maybe not be all in on the deadline, but have to make key strategic additions before Monday afternoon at 3 o'clock. Coming up, 2 different wide receiver stories that broke yesterday in the NFL have me buying stock in one team and selling on another, even though it's very early in training camp. I'll tell you exactly who those 2 teams are next here on Westwood One Sports.
Welcome back to You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
Bonus points for our excellent board op, Laura Jimenez, who brings me back with some Limp Bizkit. You know exactly how to keep a guy who grew up in the late 90s, early 2000s happy, Laura. Excellent work. Top of the hour, Nick Friedel, our Odyssey NBA insider, will join us. Also in the third and final hour, about exactly 1 hour from now, West Virginia football coach Rich Rodriguez. One of the few coaches I haven't heard try to flame another coach or conference in the last week and a half. I love college football media days. Coming up in 15 minutes, we might have to play you this Liam Cohn clip that's making the rounds this morning. And also, I wouldn't be doing my job as a proper fill-in host if I just boilerplate agreed with everything the regular host always has to say. So in 15 minutes, why I think Nick was wrong about something yesterday. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos here on You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM. Two different stories in the last 24 hours in the NFL that have me buying and selling the teams that these stories are related to. We talked about them earlier in the show. You have Deebo Samuel going back to the Niners. It's kind of one of those things where you break up with someone, right? Because you realize it's not a great relationship. And you both go out and, sow your royal oats, as Prince Akeem did in Queens so many years ago. And you end up realizing that the grass was actually not all that much greener on the other side. And you end up coming back to each other. And that's really all it is. Because, look, I want to be clear. I'm not a Deebo Samuel hater or detractor or anything like that. I just, look, at this point, Deebo's very limited in how much he can give you, I think. And if Deebo's running as like a fourth wide receiver in your group and just doing some of the fun jet sweep pop pass stuff, all good. A little change of pace. A little trickeration, I'm all for it. But when you're the Niners and you're just decimated by injuries, especially at the receiver position like the Niners are right now. Ricky Pearsall, who knows? Christian Kirk, dinged up. Mike Evans, 76 years old. And your next option is DeJon Stribling, second-round pick. I really like Stribling, but look, rookie. So you bring in Deebo Samuel. And if you look up week 1 at your San Francisco 49ers and the 3 wide receivers that trot out onto the field are Mike Evans, DeJon Stribling, and Deebo Samuel, you're in trouble. So I am selling the Niners right now. I am selling Niners stock if anybody would like to buy some. Maybe I'm cashing out too low, but I'll be honest, my portfolio can't handle it right now. I'm over leveraged, as they say, in Niners stock. So we're just gonna realize the sunk cost here and just bail on it. Because speaking of guys that are 76 years old, Trent Williams, George Kittle, also dinged up. The defense, that's the sound you make when you're completely and totally underwhelmed by something. That's the Niners defense. And this division is stacked. So it wouldn't shock me if the Niners go 8-9, 9-8 this year. Which by their standards, I think would be a pretty big disappointment. So I'm selling my Niners stock. I am buying, though, New Orleans Saints stock. And it's for a multitude of reasons. The Chris Olave extension was announced yesterday. And it's not just, oh, great, a contract extension for Chris Olave. That's nice. That's good. You drafted Jordan Tyson in the first round. You've got weapons. Juwan Johnson, all old reliable at tight end. And then you added a running back who should actually be able to play, Travis Etienne. Kamara as like a complimentary / third down back might be a perfect role for him at this point in his career. And Tyler Shuck gets to start the entire season and not have to battle for the starting quarterback spot. Another defense that similarly forces you to make sounds, but the offense is starting to come together. And let's be honest, that division, the Panthers are a mess right now due to injuries. The Buccaneers are trying to piss off their best players. Who else is even in that division? Who am I forgetting, honestly, in the NFC South? Saints, Bucks, Panthers. Oh, the Falcons. That's right. Sorry. Who's your quarterback again? Oh. So I am buying Saints stock. It would be mildly surprising, but not an overwhelming shock to my system if I looked up in early January and the Saints were 9-8 and the NFC South champs. So we're going to buy Saints stock. I'm going to sell Niners stock. Bill Zimmerman, intrepid executive producer of You Better You Bet here on Westwood One Sports. I give you one team, maybe even a player. Anybody you want to buy or sell stock in just less than a week into training camp.
Well, Chris, you just brought up one team. Now, I look at some of the stocks I've already bought and sold before training camp. I can't sell any more Bucs stock because I sold it all. I did find some in the couch cushions earlier today. There was one share left. So that one's out the door. I have sold all Bucs stock. I think that is going in the wrong direction. However, I was on the fence with a team where I was maybe thinking they could get back to and win the South again with the Carolina Panthers. I am now selling my Carolina Panthers stock, and you brought it up. This team has just gotten bitten in the rear by injuries. It is just going, and it's not just like injuries where you're like, oh, well, this guy's going to miss 3 weeks. He might be a little rusty the first couple of weeks of the season. No, these guys are out for the year, out for extended periods of time. They've lost a key pass rusher. They've lost 2 or 3 key offensive linemen. Chris Brazzell went down yesterday. He's gone. Now they don't have the depth they need at wide receiver. This is I feel bad for this team. It is falling apart for them in the first week of training camp, Chris, and it's not their fault. These guys are just dropping like flies.
Yeah. The NFC South, which I think we all agreed was not going to produce more than one playoff team anyway, has become even more watered down, especially when we talk about Tua and Penix and is anybody going to be healthy enough to play quarterback in Atlanta? And you're right. I do feel bad because I felt like the Panthers, just by virtue of being the best of a bad bunch last year and getting to play in that wild card game against the Rams, that maybe there was a learning curve being achieved there, and that maybe they'd be able to take a step forward this year. And I've always had a little bit of a soft spot for Bryce Young because I believed in him coming out, and then he was just a dumpster fire for a year and a half. But there's just not a lot of hope in Tampa, Atlanta, Carolina. So I think it all adds up to a big, healthy buy of Saints stock. Kenny, without mentioning Luther Burden, if you can avoid it, please, can you tell me who or which team you might be buying or selling stock in right now?
This isn't a sleeper team, but it is a team that I think has true juggernaut potential, and it's the Baltimore Ravens. I think there's a good chance Jesse Minter turns this defense into one of the best in the league. I think Kyle Hamilton's the best defensive back in football. Respect to Pat Surtain. I just think his versatility. I think Minter's going to have a lot of fun with him. They definitely have enough in the pass rush now, adding Trey Hendrickson. Then on the offensive side of the ball, Lamar Jackson, if healthy, I think he's going to return to MVP form. He was the MVP in 2023. He finished second in 2024. Obviously, he wasn't healthy. Now the players are saying he's the 69th best player in the league. The executives are saying he's fifth. Get out of here with that. So you've got an MVP quarterback, potential elite defense. To me, that's a potential regular season juggernaut. Now, I don't know what they would do in the playoffs, but I think them and Cincinnati, who I'm also high on, are going to be fighting for it all year in the AFC North and both win 12 or more games.
Ooh, 12 or more for Baltimore is a bold statement. I've reiterated multiple times this offseason, I'm not sold on Jesse Minter making the immediate leap from defensive coordinator wonderkind to top of the line NFL head coach. I think there's going to be a little bit of a growth period there, a little bit of a learning curve for Minter. So that's why I'm neutral on the Ravens right now. But Kenny's buying Ravens stock. Tyler, anybody you want to buy or sell just a few days into training camp?
Yeah, I actually thought Bill would mention this team. I think this is going to be one of the official teams of You Better You Bet. I love the Minnesota Vikings this year. And I know that some people are just ragging on Kyler Murray. Just think about his career. His coaches have been Cliff Kingsbury and Jonathan Gannon. Now he's got Kevin O'Connell as his head coach, two really good receivers in Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison. I mean, anytime Kevin O'Connell has a competent coach, they win over a competent quarterback, they win over 10 games. So I think Kyler Murray's a sneaky MVP candidate. They have no run game. I think he's going to put up a ton of high good stats this year. So I love the Vikings this year. I think they could have won 13, 12 games this year. So that's the team I'm buying, the Minnesota Vikings.
What's the number on Kyler Murray for MVP?
40-1.
Is it 40-1? I don't know if I'd buy it at 40-1, but that's a hell of a look. I don't think Kyler's MVP level this year. I do think, like you said, people are ragging on him just because of what they've seen to this point, and this is an opportunity for him to just completely turn his career back in the positive direction. He's not going to lose the job to J.J. McCarthy. So Minnesota, with the Brian Flores defense, with all of the talent on offense, and they have a ton. I like Minnesota to, at the very least, be a wild card team. And depending on how the rest of the North plays out, maybe find themselves in the conversation for the NFC North Championship late in the year. But I'm not 110% in lockstep because of the Kyler Murray MVP hot take, Tyler. But I will probably buy some Viking stock right alongside you. So a little bit of a stock report, NFL stock market report, just about a week into training camp here on Westwood One Sports. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos here on You Better You Bet. I would not be doing my job as a fill-in host if I simply just agreed with everything and rubber stamped everything Nick Kostos had to say, the regular host here on You Better You Bet. So I'm going to push back on one thing I heard Nick say yesterday about the AFC North, and we'll do that next here on Westwood One Sports.
Welcome back to You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
I got no problems with Akon either. Nick Friedel going to join us top of the hour, Odyssey NBA insider. A week ago at this time, we were getting the breaking news that LeBron James was heading to Philadelphia. And we didn't have time to get Nick on that morning because quite literally it was like a half hour left in the show or something. And so we have to have Nick on a Friedel Friday to give his feedback. Now that we've all had a week to sort of process it and decompress from the immediate news, get Nick's reaction to LeBron James in Philly. That coming up at the top of the hour. In about 40 minutes, live on the phone from Morgantown, West by God, Virginia, Rich Rodriguez, Mountaineers head coach, will join us to talk about his second year back in Morgantown and the complexion of the Mountaineers program, quarterback battle, Big 12, all of it. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos here on Westwood One Sports. It is You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM, and our good friends at BetMGM are hooking you up. As always, there's a lot of baseball to bet on this weekend, and if your home run bet comes up short, no sweat. Thanks to today's MLB No Sweat Home Run Token inside your BetMGM app, you don't have to worry if your bet doesn't clear the fences. Just activate your token when you bet on any player to hit a home run, and if that player fails to go yard, you'll get your stake back in bonus bets. All waiting for you right now inside the BetMGM app. Download it today, and please gamble responsibly. So I would not be doing my job properly if when I filled in for Nick Kostos here on You Better You Bet, I simply just agreed with everything Nick had to say. And as I was sitting there listening to the show yesterday, I actually wasn't sitting. I was cutting the grass while I was doing it. Full disclosure. Breaking a sweat. But I was listening to Nick talk about a couple of teams in what I consider, as a born and bred Pittsburgh Steelers fan, my home division, the AFC North. And I heard Nick talk about the Bengals and the Browns. And I'll start with what he had to say about the Browns. What Nick essentially said about the Browns, and I'm paraphrasing somewhat. Apologies, Nick, if you're listening or you hear this later and you say, that's not exactly what I said, Mac. Well, I'm going to get it as close as I can. He feels like the Browns are in a decent position to build out the roster everywhere else other than quarterback this year, then go find their quarterback in next year's draft, and almost immediately be in a spot to compete. Not contend for a championship. That's not what he said. But compete if they go out and get their quarterback next year. And to that, I would say respectfully, you kidding me? The Browns roster is always going to have bright spots, right? The Denzel Ward extension that we saw a couple days ago, the defense, even despite the departure of Jim Schwartz, should still be pretty good. But as long as Jimmy Haslam is the owner of the Cleveland Browns, the Browns' ceiling will be playoffs at best if everything goes right. Look back at 2020. When everything went right. Okay, other than the fact that your head coach had to manage the game from his basement when you were in the wild card game. But everything went right for the Browns in 2020. And look, to their credit, they slayed the dragon. They beat their hated rival on the road, granted in an empty stadium, but they beat their hated rival on the road in the playoffs and didn't just beat them, but spanked them, whooped them. That was it. That was the ceiling. That was the Browns Super Bowl, the 2020 wild card win over the Steelers in Pittsburgh. And as long as Jimmy Haslam is the owner of the Cleveland Browns, that's as good as it's ever going to get, Browns fans. I'm sorry. Because they will mismanage this thing into the ground again. I shouldn't even say again. They will just continue to mismanage this thing into the ground. just when you think there's a glimmer of hope, they will snuff it out. As they're actively doing right now by strong-arming Todd Monken into making Deshaun Watson the starting quarterback. Find out what you have in Shedeur Sanders. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe he's a giant bust. But find out what you have. Because look, you're the Browns. You're not winning more than 6 games max this year. Max. And you're going to have an opportunity to, as Nick pointed out yesterday, draft that franchise quarterback next year. And yes, I do like I said, some of the other aspects of the roster that have been built out. But they are so much farther away from being competitive again than just figuring out the quarterback position. Because at some point, the owner will step in and screw it up, even if they think they figured it out. So I wanted to push back on that just a little bit. And also, I heard Nick kept it in the state of Ohio yesterday, right around this time, actually, I was listening. And he talked about the Bengals. And the Shamar Stewart injury, obviously, was the piece of news that brought it up. And that was ugly looking. But one thing that I heard Nick say yesterday, and I've heard lots of people say this. So, I'm not just poking a hole here in Nick's direction. A lot of people have said, well, the Bengals need everything to go right. And I know our executive producer, Bill Zimmerman, feels pretty similarly. That everything needs to go right for the Bengals. I don't know if it does. The offense, look, if by everything go right, you just mean Joe Burrow has to stay healthy, then okay, fine, we can agree. But if Joe Burrow stays healthy, they don't need everything to go right. This defense just has to be middle of the pack. That's it. That's it. If they have a middle of the pack defense, this offense is going to win them at least 8 or 9 games. And then they'll win a couple more around the margins. They're a 10-win team, maybe 11. If the defense is just good enough, Goldilocks, just right. Doesn't have to be too good, but as long as it's not super bad again this year, somewhere in the middle of the pack, that Bengals defense is going to give Joe Burrow a chance to win enough games to get them into a wild card spot and save Zach Taylor's job. I don't think it needs to be this thing where all the cosmic tumblers fall into place in just the right alignment. I don't. I think the Bengals' offensive talent alone is enough, as long as the defense isn't putrid again. So just a couple of little things that I wanted to push back on. It's my duty, right? As a fill-in host, to not just patently agree with everything the regular host says. That would make me a lackey. Really, it would. I mean, lapdog. Yes, Nick, you're right about everything. I think Nick's right about a lot. In fact, I would agree wholeheartedly with something Nick said yesterday when he brought up the whole Kawhi Leonard mess. And look, I agree with what Nick said about Pablo Torre yesterday. The guy's won a Pulitzer. He does incredible investigative journalism. But I think I am wholeheartedly at the point where I don't care. Sorry, I shouldn't say I don't care at all. I do think the integrity of the salary cap and, how Kawhi got paid by Steve Ballmer, that is important to maintaining a sense of order, playing by the rules as far as the cap is concerned in the NBA. But as far as the impact on the court, and like Nick said yesterday, I just want to watch the games. I have a hard time ginning up enough mild annoyance, let alone anger or even rage, towards the Kawhi Leonard situation that some people seem to have. And again, all due credit to Pablo Torre. who's an incredible reporter. And I think a lot of the stuff he has done has been really, really fascinating. But this is one of those things that I just look at and go, my eyes glaze over. Like, I can only crawl so far down the rabbit hole lined with a paper trail before I go, what are we talking about again? Kawhi owns a soccer team in Rhode Island? Why do I care about this? So, despite disagreeing with Nick on the Browns and the Bengals, I do agree with him that I can only find so much energy to care about the whole Kawhi Leonard investigation that the NBA is apparently going to wrap up just sometime before Kawhi Leonard's grandchildren are born. Coming up, it's been a week since the news that LeBron James is headed to Philly broke. We've had some time to take a deep breath and assess the situation. We'll ask our friend and Odyssey NBA insider Nick Friedel what he thinks of LeBron and the Sixers next here on Westwood One Sports.
Welcome back to You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
It is the third and final hour of You Better You Bet on this fabulous Sports Friday. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos here on Westwood One Sports. We are presented by BetMGM. Always live inside the Westwood One Sports app, inside your Odyssey app, AUDACY, and live across North America on SiriusXM channel 375. Hello as well to all of our wonderful affiliates. We welcome you in as West Virginia head coach Rich Rodriguez will join us in 25 minutes. We'll talk to him and preview the season. We've had plenty of back and forth about the SEC and the Big Ten. Kurt Signetti lobbing grenades at the SEC and everybody going back and forth. I love college football media days. And Rich Rodriguez, I know, will pull no punches, both about his own team and just how he feels about college football in general. So we'll get to him in a little more than 20 minutes here on Westwood One Sports. But it was almost exactly a week ago at this time. It's right around 11:35 Eastern, last Friday morning. We were sitting here I don't even remember what randomness I was talking about at that point in time, but it was certainly random at that point in time as compared to the breaking news that came down, which was that LeBron James would be going to Philadelphia to join the 76ers. And who better to talk to about this than a guy I love spending some time with every Friday when I get to fill in for Nick here on You Better You Bet. Odyssey NBA insider Nick Friedel joins us, a Friedel Friday, as he's ready to head on over to Wrigley for an afternoon game between the Yankees and the Cubs. Will you be taking part in a beer snake out there in the bleachers this afternoon, Nick?
I did the other day when I was here a couple weeks ago, Chris. I'm not going to the bleachers today. The bleachers are cool in spurts. I want to be a little closer if I can be.
Got to pace yourself. I get it. We're at that age now. You can't hammer it back the way you used to. Otherwise, the whole weekend is gone. Odyssey NBA insider Nick Friedel. Insider calls brought to you by Hyundai and the all-new Hyundai Palisade Hybrid. So let's just rewind the clock a week ago to last Friday morning. What was your initial reaction around this time last Friday when you heard the news that LeBron was going to Philly?
It makes plenty of sense on the surface, Chris, that the Sixers are really good. They got a lot of talented pieces. The thing that struck me instantly was, man, how does LeBron think Joel Embiid is going to stay healthy in the postseason? Because they've got so many different talented guys up top at the front of that roster, but you're going to need Embiid. If this is all about winning a title, and you told me that Embiid could stay healthy, then great. I think they can have a legitimate chance to not only get through the Knicks in the East, but then San Antonio, OKC, whomever comes out in the West. But nothing, absolutely nothing that we've seen in the last few years would lead me to believe that Embiid can stay healthy for the 2 months between April and June. I just don't believe it. So I think it's cool that LeBron is trying something new. The Miami thing would have just been a rerun of what we've already seen. That team wasn't good enough. Cleveland with Harden and Donovan Mitchell, no thank you. When you look at Philly, that part makes sense. But unless there is something that nobody knows that has not been made public, that was the first thought that ran through my mind. Wow, it's Philly. Why is he trusting Embiid that much?
Was it simply the Jaylen Brown effect? I mean, I think that's the reaction. When we saw Rich Paul break down the whiteboard a couple weeks ago, right, with Max Kellerman, we all went, oh, okay, he's definitely thought about Philly a little bit more seriously than any of us had given it credit for because of Jaylen Brown. So LeBron learned last year, especially down the stretch in L.A., to be accepting of a role that he hasn't been accustomed to this point yet in his career, which is, hey, sometimes you're number 3 on the court on a given night. Is he going to be accepting of some nights, maybe not just being number 3, maybe being number 4 or even number 5 in what is probably, at least on paper, the most talented starting 5 in the league?
The answer is yes. I think at this stage, Chris, LeBron has to be the fill-in-the-gaps guy. And it's weird to say about one of the greatest players of all time, but when you're at this advanced age and you've played all these minutes, the reality is if somebody goes down, LeBron knows where to play all over the floor. So he has to just kind of be whatever they need him to be night to night, and he can pick his spots. But this is the same type of conversation with Embiid. If you're acquiring LeBron, you want him to help and you want him to teach the younger guys and get them more comfortable. But you are bringing him to your team so that he can help you in the playoffs. So it's all a dress rehearsal. I mean, they need to find their rhythm, certainly. You can't just throw 5 guys out there and say, okay, go get them. The Sixers have talent. They don't have that much talent. So regular season does have some importance, but this is all about getting to the middle of April and seeing how everything fits. So in that regard, exactly what type of position he plays, we'll see. But he's going to play all over the place because he needs to be the guy that can teach everybody else where they need to be. And there's no greater teacher than somebody that the entirety of that roster and the whole league still respects at such a high level.
There's been a lot made, especially by Celtics fans this offseason, about Jaylen Brown and maybe his reticence to once again share the court with Jason Tatum or any other star for that matter. It was a big belief of some people that was one of the reasons he was comfortable leaving Boston was because he expressed how much he enjoyed this year, getting to be the man. Is there any inkling you think that maybe Jaylen Brown is once again, if this year doesn't produce a title run, is going to look around and say, man, I really wish I was the guy. I'm definitely not the guy, but there's no hope of him being the guy in Philly as long as Tyrese Maxey is around.
I couldn't agree with you anymore. And only Jaylen Brown is going to know how he feels at the end of this season. But Chris, I'm with you. If he thought he was going to a team where he could finally prove I'm the man and I'm the guy, as far as the hierarchy goes, he's not one, and there are going to be nights where he isn't two either. So I think it all kind of depends on how comfortable he feels in a new situation. It's why I understand the hope and the hype around this team, but I wouldn't bet on the Sixers this year. On top of my concerns with Embiid staying healthy, how do all those pieces fit? Where Jaylen Brown, he loved being the guy. There was no Tatum. He could get seemingly whatever he wanted. He's a hell of a player. But is he going to be okay riding shotgun to other guys down the stretch of games again? I mean, where does everybody fit? There are a lot of egos in play, and there's only one ball. And I don't blame Philly at all for doing what they've done, but especially in this first year, I wouldn't put my money near them because I don't buy that you can make it all come together in year one. And so to the point about Jaylen Brown, if you said, all right, he still feels good about Philly a year from now, okay, but let's see how the season plays out. Let's see how he performs, and let's see how far they go. I don't see them being able to get all the way through the East 1 year in with trying to add the players in play like Jaylen Brown and LeBron and seeing what that works with their core.
Odyssey NBA insider Nick Friedel with us here on Westwood One Sports. Insider Calls brought to you by Hyundai and by the all-new Hyundai Palisade Hybrid. Learn how it makes every day epic at HyundaiUSA.com. The complexion of the Eastern Conference obviously changes when you see LeBron James sign in Philly. The odds board is up right there on the screen next to our faces for those watching the show, and Philly's at the top at plus 350. The Knicks return most of their roster intact. The Celtics obviously take a half step, if not a full step back in losing Jaylen Brown. The Raptors, it seems, will have Kawhi Leonard in the fold. The Pistons are coming off the best record in the conference. The Cavs bring back Harden and Mitchell, as you mentioned. The Heat trade for Giannis. The one team that doesn't get talked about at all, that's only 14 months removed from an NBA Finals appearance, is Indiana. Do the Pacers, do you think, are being sort of inadvertently left off of everyone's radar after their season without Halliburton?
Well, Chris, to be fair, I don't think they're usually on people's radar even when they're good. So I don't think the Pacers are somebody that we're talking about much in general. To your point, though, they were just there. The problem is that Halliburton suffered the awful injury. And so, as far as this year goes and why they're not in the conversation, I think they can have a nice year. I just never believed that when you're coming off that serious of an injury, in that first year back, everything clicks and comes together. They might well continue to add, and Halliburton may look good, but I think he's going to be a lot better a year and a half from now than he will be going into next season, just because we don't know exactly how he's going to look, and we don't know what level he'll be at when he does return. So I think the Pacers are poised to really improve from whatever the hell that was last year, which was a mess. I just don't think they're going to get back to the level that we've seen them at in short order. That takes time, and those kind of injuries, they're awful, but that's pro sports in a nutshell.
The Warriors were one of those teams that was sort of right on the periphery of the LeBron conversation most of the time. Actually, at the forefront of the LeBron conversation for a weekend there back in June. And then they don't land LeBron, and they've really done nothing appreciable in bringing in outside talent this offseason. They did extend Draymond Green. They got that worked out a couple days ago. So what is the reaction, maybe not just amongst the fans out in the Bay Area, but amongst the players on that team, especially the veteran core of Curry and Draymond? Are they pushing the organization to do something before the end of this offseason? Do they feel like they can somehow piece together one more run?
There's certainly frustration, Chris, internally that they can't turn it around into something more right now. But specific to Draymond and Steph, I think they also understand that if you start giving away first-round picks now, in this era of the league, they've never been more valuable. So unless you are acquiring somebody that is going to take you to a completely different level, if you swing and you're just a little bit better, that's your team. You're stuck. So as frustrating as it is for a team that's used to winning at the highest level, I think a lot of the people internally, and that goes all the way to the top with Steph and Draymond, I think they understand. Draymond, I've talked to him about it enough. He's always been open about the fact that he appreciates what he and Steph and Klay Thompson built. He doesn't want them to just trade all these picks and be awful a few years from now when everybody's gone and they got to start over. So that's one part of it. The second part is the fans, the people that have been around this team and followed them for years. They are pissed. They are so used to that team being so good, and they can't believe that this team that was so mediocre last year is going to be more than likely another mediocre team this year, aside from the addition of Yaxel Lendeborg. It's about the exact same group, and they're waiting for Jimmy Butler. So there is a large dichotomy between Group A and Group B. What I would tell you is, at least from where I sit, I think the Warriors are making the right move this summer. They didn't land LeBron. There was hope it was going to happen. It didn't happen. But that doesn't mean that you go trade away all your picks for Jaylen Brown or Anthony Davis or somebody at that level, because they're going to make you better, but they're not going to make you nearly as good as you need to be to get back up towards the top of the West with San Antonio and OKC.
I mentioned a couple minutes ago when I was running down the list of possible contenders in the Eastern Conference, Nick, that we think Kawhi will be a Raptor this year. And it seems that given the pace of the NBA's investigation into whether the Clippers circumvented the cap or not in signing Kawhi a couple years ago, that's probably going to keep Kawhi in Toronto unless there's some sort of snap judgment in the next 2.5 months. I mentioned it a couple minutes ago. Nick Kostos mentioned it yesterday here on this show. I'm having a hard time as a sports fan in general getting angry about this. I do. It's not to say I don't care about teams finding a way to circumvent the cap and the competitive imbalance it would create, because that competitive balance is so crucial to why the NBA has been so fun to watch over the last 6, 7, 8 years. But can you break it down? Explain it to us like we're 5-year-olds. Why we should care about what's going on with Kawhi and the investigation into the Clippers and Ballmer and everything else, and whether it can actually have a practical impact on the games we want to watch this season.
The reason people should care, and the reason that people inside the league and certainly with different teams are so upset, Chris, is because they don't want the rules bent to a level where it's just the wild, wild west behind the scenes. If you allow whatever is alleged to have happened in this Kawhi deal to happen, then you're saying that all it's going to take are some backroom deals that nobody really knows about that may or may not come to the forefront years later. And you can squeeze teams out of millions of dollars, but you can bend the rules. So I think the short answer is people should care because they want things to be on the up and up. And if your favorite team wants to go sign superstar A and doesn't, for reasons that are beyond the control of whatever the cap rules are, then that's why fans are and should be upset. What I would tell you is the league has done itself no favors in all this, because it's been such a huge distraction and it's been ongoing for months and months and months. They need to just wrap this thing up and be done. The longer it goes, the more frustrated fans are just going to be like, who cares? And the reality is they should care to a point, because you don't want everything to turn into college athletics. Like, you don't want everything to become, okay, who's got the most money? And it doesn't always have to be the most legal money, just the most money, period. And we'll get whoever we want in here. I think there has to be some sort of framework of rules that everybody has to be aligned on. And when that doesn't happen, that's when you get some really, really pissed off people.
Nick, love catching up with you as always. Enjoy the rest of your summer. We will talk again soon, my friend. Just a couple old styles this afternoon. No beer snake.
Just a couple. I like that, but it's always good to be with you, buddy. I appreciate you having me all year, and look forward to talking again soon when this gets rolling again.
Absolutely. Odyssey NBA insider Nick Friedel. Thanks, Nick. We'll talk again soon. Insider Calls brought to you by Hyundai and by the all-new Hyundai Palisade Hybrid. Learn how it makes every day epic at HyundaiUSA.com. And I think that's the key with the Kawhi thing there. Yes, I know we should care because of the competitive imbalance it could create when you've got Steve Ballmer's running around allegedly providing backroom deals to superstars to circumvent the cap. It's just, as Nick said there, very hard to continue caring about it at the level you should when the story just lingers and lingers and lingers. I am curious to see. I think it's the most fascinating part of the LeBron signing in Philly, what the dynamics are like when that team hits a skid at some point, because you know it's going to happen. Every NBA team hits a point at some span of the season where it could get testy. How testy does it get in that locker room between LeBron and Jaylen Brown and Tyrese Maxey? And it's going to be the most fascinating story league-wide all year long. Thanks again to Nick for making the time. Coming up here on Westwood One Sports, the SEC and the Big Ten are pulling pins and lobbing grenades at each other while the rest of college football gets ready for, well, the football season. We'll go down some country roads and talk to one of my favorites. West Virginia head coach Rich Rodriguez joins us next here on You Better You Bet.
Welcome back to You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
West Virginia, Mountain Mama. Coming up in just a minute, we'll talk to Mountaineers head coach Rich Rodriguez, live on the horn from Morgantown, getting ready for the 2026 season. Plenty to talk to Rich about, not just with his Mountaineers, quarterback battle, second year back in Morgantown for Coach Rodriguez, but the landscape of the Big 12, obviously, and also college football as a whole. Plenty to talk to Rich Rodriguez about in just a couple minutes. This from Adam Schefter, just tweeted out a few moments ago. CBS Sports has announced that Tony Romo is on leave from his role, quote, until further notice. Ruh-roh. I don't know, Jim. Yeah, if that ends up being permanent, J.J. Watt straight to the top on the first team with Jim Nantz. I don't know if anybody other than maybe first-year Romo has jumped in and done as... And Romo's job was more about, like, oh, he's predicting what play it's going to be and all this stuff. J.J. Watt, I think, has done as good a job as anybody first year in the booth. Just jumping in and bang. Quality analysis, doing it with energy, fun, humor. And Ian Eagle's a great compliment to him, too. Ian does a great job at everything he does, by the way. Not to get too deep into the broadcasting talk here, but as long as Nantz is around and calling football, he's going to be the number one play-by-play guy at CBS. But like the day Jim Nantz decides to hang up the headset, Ian Eagle and J.J. Watt are your number one team. Rubber stamp it. It's done. It's got to be. It has to be. And it'll be great because those two together, like I said, Ian's great at play-by-play. JJ nails the analysis, and they do it while having just enough fun. It's not like a baseball broadcast team when it's a 13-2 game in mid-September and both teams are out of it, where like you don't even... other than the sounds of a baseball game happening in the background, you would have no idea that a baseball game is actually happening. Like Ron Darling and Keith Hernandez are talking about like cutting their toenails or something other, that one time Lenny Dykstra showed up for a game without any clothes on. I just made that up. That may or may not be true, although I wouldn't be surprised if it did. That's what you get there. JJ and Ian do a great job of being entertaining in that vein while still keeping it on the game. But yeah, that's the news this morning that Tony Romo is on leave from his role until further notice, according to CBS Sports. Which, by the way, the AI memes of Romo doing the Dak Prescott hip thing during warm-ups. Look, I understand that AI may be the downfall of our civilization. But sometimes you just have to acknowledge that if you're just using it for fun, it can be fun. Okay? And Tony Romo, barefoot, doing the Dak Prescott hip warm-up during that AI video that whoever created a little golf clap to you has been one of the silver linings to this whole situation. Also, according to Adam Schefter, for the time being, J.J. Watt will step up and replace Tony Romo and be on the Jim Nantz and Tracy Wolfson team. For the time being. That's going to be permanent sooner rather than later. Rich Rodriguez, just getting word. I mean, it's early in the season. Camp isn't even underway yet, I don't think, in Morgantown. So he's trying to wrap up a meeting, and then he's going to jump on the horn with us, and we'll talk to him about what's expected, what he expects from this team, because it is a team that's still in transition. Look, I should qualify that. Every college football team is always in transition because of the portal now. And maybe that's one of the things we can ask Rich about. Just his adjustment as being a veteran ball coach to that landscape and having to constantly manage your roster. But every team is always in transition now because of the portal. West Virginia, one of those teams in a really highly competitive Big 12. So looking forward to catching up with Rich when we get a chance to do so, hopefully here in just a couple of moments. I mentioned earlier, Liam Cohen was on, I believe, with 1010XL in Jacksonville. I think it was yesterday from Jags training camp. And I don't have the audio handy, so don't worry about it, Laura. But he went on this extended, not rant, but this extended jag about how nobody's really talking about the Jaguars. And he mentioned that he's using it to motivate the guys. I don't know if that's the way to motivate them, Liam. Nobody's talking about you because, well, you're the Jags, and you still got to prove it when the games matter the most. All right, we ripped him out of his meeting, and we got him on the phone now. Pleased to be joined by West Virginia Mountaineers head football coach, Rich Rodriguez. Coach Rodriguez, good morning. Thanks for making the time today, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it. How you guys doing?
Doing great, man. I was just talking about this. So I'll get into your return to Morgantown over the last year plus and how that's gone for you in a couple seconds because I want to ask you about it. But I just wanted to start with this. I was talking about how, your roster is in transition, but really every college football roster is in transition every single year now because of the portal. Just how different has that part of it been for you being back in Morgantown now for your second tenure and that being such a big part of it, having to almost re-recruit your entire roster, it feels like, every offseason?
Yeah, it does, and it's the nature of the business that we're in now, but I shouldn't have to do it this much. I'm not expecting to have 70 new guys again next year, I think I've got, instead of having 40 seniors and one-year guys, what have you, this year I think we have all but 15 players coming back if they all decide to come back or if we want them back. So we won't be as much of a roster flip as we did the last 2 years. And the first year we knew it was going to be like that. We got here late and we didn't have a whole lot of time, didn't have much money. And this year we had a lot more time and a little bit more money. So we were able to be a little more purposeful in who we brought in and try to get guys that had multiple years. And so we'll see how it plays out. But I feel a lot better now, roster-wise, construction-wise, than I did a year ago. But we still got to go out there and prove it.
Rich Rodriguez with us here on Westwood One Sports. Let's talk about the return to Morgantown then, Coach. Just how much has changed? How much has stayed the same? I mean, did they change the recipe for the wings at Mountain Mama's and everything else is the same? Or does it feel like you're stepping into a completely new place in Morgantown, even though you're comfortable there?
Well, I'm comfortable. What's made a difference, obviously, is what's going on in college athletics right now. As far as the town, the school, the state, it's home for me. And so that was an easy deal. And the school's grown a little bit, and the town has grown a little bit. Our university hospital system is amazing. It's grown tremendously. But what's changed, obviously, now is the transactional nature of college athletics. And, we're coaching pros now. We're paying them. And so it's a whole different dynamic. But we're ready for that. We're prepared for that. It can be frustrating because some teams you play will have a $40 million roster when you're not even half that. But, it is what it is. We know the goalposts keep moving. You got to adjust with it. And we have enough resources, enough support that we can compete. But we can't make a lot of mistakes in recruiting and who we're paying, and we're mindful of that.
Coach, during your first run at WVU, a lot of the zone read, no huddle stuff that you were running with the greats in Mountaineers history, Pat White, Steve Slayton, those guys were somewhat groundbreaking at the time for college football. The game has evolved since your first tenure there in Morgantown. How have you continued to evolve, not just what you do on offense, but I guess your strategy overall?
Yeah, that's a good question. It was. We were a little bit different then when you were a shotgun, fast, no huddle, kind of spread offense kind of a deal with tempo-wise. There were some teams doing them, but there weren't a lot. And then it seemed like, for the 10 years or so after that, everybody was doing, or a lot of people were doing it. Even the NFL was doing some of the stuff. And now it's kind of cyclical. It's coming back to some different stuff. But the core values that we have as far as playing with tempo, playing with pace, being physical, being aggressive, trying to get fast guys the ball in the open field, that's never really changed. And I think it's kind of unique that we kind of stick to our guns, but you also can't be hard-headed. Like I tell the guys all the time, I love what we're doing, but if we see something else that we think is better than what we're doing or can enhance what we're doing, well, then we need to look at that, at least research it. And that's the whole thing with coaches that I said this a bunch of times. Some coaches brag about it. They got 30 years of experience. Well, if they never learned or grew, they got 1 year experience repeated 30 times. I like to think I'm a little bit more knowledgeable and I'm a better coach now than I was 5, 10, 15, or 20 years ago. And I kind of challenge our players and our staff to get better every year too.
West Virginia head coach Rich Rodriguez with us here on Westwood One Sports. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos today here on You Better You Bet. To that end, as you continue to evolve this offense year by year, and I would imagine install new concepts, but at the same time, you're trying to teach guys those core tenets of, like you said, fast tempo. How are the quarterbacks adjusting? How do you evaluate the quarterback room right now in that battle that may be growing between Scotty Fox and Michael Hawkins?
Yeah, I think they've both grown. I think the competition is good for both of them and for us. And we want athletic, fast quarterbacks that play fast, but we can adjust to whatever their strengths are too. We got to, if he does a certain thing better than something else, then that's something we're going to feature more. But you got to have more. We wound up last year playing 5 quarterbacks because of injuries. We just had terrible luck, and I think 5 running backs. And so I told you guys, we got to get more than 1 ready. Got to probably get more than 2 ready, and I think we'll have enough guys to get ready. But also got to be better up front. Too, so they're not in tough situations. But we have a good quarterback battle going on. I feel really good where they're at. And, there's a lot of new starters. There's 20 new starters, but we got some experience, in a transfer portal. And we also have some experience, the guys that are returning that have been in our system for the second year. So it's going to be a fun team to coach, I believe.
Yeah, the Big 12 offenses in particular in the Big 12 have found some more balance over the last couple of years, and you get to reunite with Cam Cook in the backfield. Is this like a bell cow workhorse situation because you're familiar with Cam from Jacksonville State, or is this going to be a back-by-committee approach? How do you foresee the running game playing out?
Well, Cam's a veteran guy, and, he's a very intelligent guy. We know what we got. He's going to be kind of the leader in that room. But we have some really talented young guys, and they're all kind of unique. A couple of guys are a little bit bigger. A couple of guys are a little bit faster. And we got to play more than one. Last year we had to play a bunch because of injuries. And, we hope Cam can get 25 carries a game or something like that. But we have a handful of other guys, I think, and we know we're going to play. And then they'll get an opportunity. We're going to try to be able to run the ball. But we're also, very, it's important for us to be able to use all the guys that we have on offense. And so I think we're more athletic all the way around, whether it's running back, quarterback, wide receiver, tight end. And that's going to make it a lot easier for us to kind of adjust our game plans as we need to.
What have you seen in the evolution of Big 12 offenses over the last couple of years? Because we talked to Eric Morris, the new coach at Oklahoma State last week, and he said it's not just about the evolution of the offense, it's both sides of the ball. And there's been I don't want to say a recommitment, but teams have said, look, we get it. It's the Big 12. We like to light up the scoreboard, but we've also got to be able to get stops in crucial situations. How confident do you feel in the other side of the ball to be able to do that and occasionally go out and win a game, 23-20 if you have to, rather than the 47-43 we've grown accustomed to in the Big 12 over the last decade.
Yeah, and I don't ever look at it, I know I'm new to the Big 12, but I don't look at it like this league plays this way and this league plays it the other way. I've been blessed to coach in a lot of leagues. It's just really what do you do in your program in the offense, defense, and special teams. What's different nowadays is that with all the technology and what defensive coaches are getting smarter, they used to just, they fit up a run play, for instance, a certain way on the front side, and then on the back side, they would just tell them, hey, go chase the ball, pursue the ball, watch the cutback. Now they'll fit the front side of a play one way and fit the back side another way, and there's so many different types of, it's not just man coverage or zone coverage, it's kind of sometimes a man zone type of principle where they're matching up, and so there's a lot more complicated so-called schemes defensively that coaches do a great job of, and so you got to be prepared for that as well. But it still comes down to guys being in great shape, being physical, knowing what they're doing, and playing really hard. And those are the non-negotiables. And I've got good enough coaches, I think, on the staff to be able to handle different schemes, but we've got to get guys that play really hard, believe what they're doing, and not beat ourselves, having kind of mistake-free football. And that's irregardless of the schemes. And that's what's I feel good right now that we took that step in the spring. We got 2 weeks of camp coming up next week, and that's going to be our focus on that.
West Virginia head football coach Rich Rodriguez with us here on Westwood One Sports. I got to ask, you mentioned the shifting landscape. We talked about the portal and NIL and how that's changed the game over the last 5 to 10 years, Coach. But the shifting of teams from conference to conference that continues to happen on an almost annual basis. WVU has always had great regional rivalries, whether it's right up the road with Pittsburgh, whether it's you just wrapped up a series with Penn State for a couple of years, Virginia Tech, all nearby your fan base and all mean something to your fan base. How much do you wish we could get back to having as many of those on the schedule as possible?
Yeah, I've said this before, and I know it's kind of a pipe dream, but I don't know why we don't all come together. I understand why we don't, because the SEC and the Big Ten don't want to share their money, right? That's why we can't get this thing passed in Congress, because why would they want to get? They got an inherent advantage money-wise and financial and TV-wise, so why would they want to share the money with the little Big 12 or the little ACC? And so I'm hoping this thing passes in Congress right now because we need it. But I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't, because the greediness is not going to, people aren't going to just give up their deal. So, but to me, it would be great for everybody to kind of come together. I said this a couple of weeks ago, that everybody kind of gather together, go by the same rules, have the same financial salary cap, and then you have your schedule by area or region. We have a Northeast or an Eastern region, and you get to play West Virginia and Penn State and Virginia Tech and Pitt and Maryland and Virginia and Cincinnati, all those schools that our fans could drive to and have some rivalries with. That would be great for the fans. It'd be great for the teams. But, I think that's a pipe dream now, but I wish it wasn't. I think if we all pulled together, everybody would make more money. I've always said this, and I know I'm going on a tangent. It's hard to screw up college football. It's such a great entity and so much passion that it's really hard to make it screwed up. But we've done everything we can to screw it up. Let's try to fix it now and come together to fix it. And, sometimes you have to give up a little something for that to happen.
Before I let you run, Coach, it was great to see you a couple weeks ago at the Riley Green Show. I'm still not sure. McAfee claims that he hit some of those balls into the pond a little farther than you, but I think you had him on accuracy.
Yeah, we had a great time with that. What I did know that Pat's trying to tell you his singing skills. Riley's one of the best there is in the country, but Pat took the step out there to sing Country Roads. I thought that was pretty neat too.
It was a great time, man. It was good to see you. Best of luck this year. I think it's good for college football when West Virginia is good, man. Looking forward to seeing you bringing it back in Morgantown. Thanks again for the time.
Okay, great catching up with you.
Absolutely. Rich Rodriguez, West Virginia head football coach, with us here on Westwood One Sports. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos today here on You Better You Bet. I'm with them, man. Give me geographic regional conferences. Give me the rivalries that so many of us grew up watching. Make it easy for fans to rebuild those rivalries. I'm glad somebody who's in a position of power in that they're the leader of a program, but also close enough to it that they're down there on the sidelines with the players every day, feels the same way. We need more coaches like Rich Rodriguez to step up and say, hey, can we bring some sense back to this thing? Because West Virginia and Utah probably shouldn't be in the same conference, right? Not a lot of fans traveling back and forth to those games. Great stuff from Rich Rodriguez. Again, we appreciate his time. We'll come back and wrap up the show with our 3 favorite moments of the day, our 3 stars here on Westwood One Sports.
Welcome back to You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
Hey, no worries if your home run bet comes up short inside the BetMGM app with their MLB No Sweat Home Run token. You don't have to worry if that bet doesn't clear the fences. Activate your token when you bet on any player to hit a homer. If they fail to go yard, you'll get your stake back in bonus bets. Download the BetMGM app today, and please gamble responsibly. I'll be on a K prop today. Paul Skeens, 9+ strikeouts at Cincinnati tonight, is plus money inside the BetMGM app. He's got a 35% strikeout rate in 3 career starts at Great American Ballpark and 26 Ks in his last 17 2/3. It's a Skeens day for the wild card hopeful Buccos trying to get off a 3-game schneid in Cincinnati against the Reds. Time for our 3 favorite moments of the show, our 3 stars. Let's go.
3.
On the surface, Chris, the Sixers are really good. They got a lot of talented pieces. The thing that struck me instantly was, man, how does LeBron think Joel Embiid is going to stay healthy in the postseason?
Yeah, it's the biggest question for this team that the Sixers have put together. Odyssey NBA insider Nick Friedel earlier. They do stay healthy. They're the best team in the East, but we know Embiid's track record. Our number 2 star?
2.
Jason Light is a good people person. He knows his guys. I think he understands Baker's not that type of player or person that's going to become a malcontent. He's going to play his hardest. He's going to deliver when he's on the football field, no matter what he's thinking away from the football field. So I don't think that's a concern. I don't think they're looking and saying, well, we got a quarterback. This guy's waiting in the wings. We feel good about it.
Aaron Jacobson of 95.7 WDAE in Tampa earlier talking about the mess between the Bucks and Baker. I don't think they're handling it right at all. I'd give that man his money. Our number 1 star of the day?
1.
If we all pulled together, everybody would make more money. I've always said this, and I know I'm going on a tangent. It's hard to screw up college football. It's such a great entity and so much passion that it's really hard to make it screwed up. But we've done everything we can to screw it up.
West Virginia head coach Rich Rodriguez just a couple of minutes ago here on Westwood One Sports. I mean, I love his plan. Let's get more money in everybody's pockets by reigniting some of those traditional regional rivalries and not sending teams all the way across the country every week to play in conference. Great stuff from Rich Rod. Loved having him on the show as well. Always love filling in for Nick Kostos here on You Better You Bet. Chris Mack with you on Westwood One Sports. Thanks to the entire crew behind the scenes for always making me look good and keeping me from sounding too stupid. Laura, Kenny, Tyler, Dan, Mike, and of course, Bill. We didn't get any breaking contractual news, I don't think, in the last couple of minutes, which has been different from the last couple of days, but we do have the whole Tony Romo thing coming down. J.J. Watt getting elevated to the first team for CBS. Bleck and Abdallah will talk about that and so much more. Keep it here all weekend long right here on Westwood One Sports.